Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Gaspy. I'm a senior admission counselor at Gonzaga and want to welcome you to our financial aid webinar for admitted students for Gonzaga University. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues from our admission and financial aid offices, and we're all going to introduce ourselves in a little bit. But as you all continue to join us during this webinar, we would love to get to know you a bit. So let's start by putting what part of the US or world you're joining us in from using the chat. So please feel free to type in the chat where you're joining us in from. See if there's any other future ZAGs in your area. Amazing, definitely representing the West Coast. We've got Wisconsin, we've got New York. This is amazing. Colorado, Idaho, Alaska. It's coming in so fast, I can't keep up. Montana, Oregon, Albuquerque. This is amazing. We are so excited to be with you all today and for you to be able to take some time to join us and learn more about your financial aid offer and what financial aid looks like at Gonzaga. So for those that are still joining, again, we are so excited to have you. We're just putting in the chat where you all are zooming in from this evening. We would love to see where you're all at, and also to see if you have any other future ZAGs joining with us today too. Awesome. We'll give folks one more minute before we fully get started. Awesome. Welcome, Mia, Henry. So lovely to have you all. Okay, well, of course, we want to be mindful of everyone's time, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good evening and welcome to our financial aid webinar for admitted students for Gonzaga University. You all are joining from all over the US and quite possibly the world. My name is Alexa Gaspy, and I'm a senior admission counselor here at GU and one of your hosts for the evening. You may have noticed that we are recording this webinar. So for those that are unable to attend or for you to view later, it will be posted on our YouTube channel and also will be emailed to you in the coming days. We would love to answer all of your questions though. So throughout the presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A function, and we will have some of our colleagues answer them through the Q&A or bring them to our attention to answer live. I want to stress the fact that we will only be answering questions through the Q&A and not in the chat. We're going to try our best to get through as many questions as we are able to, but I also want to remind everyone to not disclose any personal information in the Q&A or the chat because everyone will be able to see that information. Please contact our financial aid office for those really specific questions. Additionally, we will also be providing some poll questions throughout the presentation to make this a little bit more interactive. So joining me today are several of my colleagues that I'd like for you to meet, and we're going to start with Sarah, who's one of our co-hosts for tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at Gonzaga. I'm here today representing the Student Financial Services Department, which also includes student accounts and student employment, but we're mostly going to be focused on financial aid. I work with all levels of students in my job, but I really love working with new students and happy to be here and share a little bit more about the financial aid and student employment tonight.
We also have Teresa Foster and Helen Van Blaricom from the Financial Aid Office, and from our admission office, we have Becky Stockton and Sandra Vance. They will also be hosting this event tonight with us and addressing your questions through the Q&A.
Thanks, Alexa. So before we dive into the financial aid details, we wanted to just take a moment to highlight the mission that we have here in Student Financial Services and our approach to assisting students and families with the process. So in our office, we're really committed to Gonzaga's overall mission, and we hope that you see that through our service and our policies. We see our role not only to assist students and families with resources for attending Gonzaga, but also to develop and educate students through our work. And it goes without saying, but finances are just really personal. We get that very well in our office. So if you don't get your questions answered today, or other questions come up throughout the process, which they'll inevitably will, don't hesitate to contact us and ask for help. I think our customer service is really one of the strengths of our student financial services, and really all across Gonzaga. Becky's going to share our contact information in the chat. We take a team approach to helping students. We find that that's the best way to get students in touch with experts, and trust that we have an experienced, well-staffed office, and each of us are committed to excellent service. Again, we really take pride in our commitment to students. Financial aid can be so confusing, and my colleagues and I are really here to help make it as transparent and clear as possible. So to get us started talking about the financial aid process, let's do our first poll. How many of you have received or accessed your financial aid offer from Gonzaga? That's awesome. I love it. So for the three of us here, as the ones who sort of like stuff the envelopes and send them into the mail, it's really a relief to know that so many people have got financial aid offers. But also, if you're one of the no, or you're not quite sure, let me just kind of take a moment to tell you where we're at in the process. So on February 24th, we physically mailed out most financial aid offers for new freshman students who've been accepted to Gonzaga. And really, we probably had to have your FAFSA by about February 14th for you to be included in that initial round. These students should have also received an email from Gonzaga. Information is available to access your award. The financial aid information is available on our student portal ZagWeb. And we're going to go through some of the details on how you can access that if you haven't received the paper letter. We continue to create offers every week, and that'll be true until school starts and even beyond. So if you don't have something from us now, after you check your email or check ZagWeb, please get in touch with our office, and we can just make sure that you're not getting caught up in, sometimes it's hard to match a FAFSA application with an admissions application. So if you haven't received something, that's a great reason to get in touch with our office so we can track down that aid offer for you. So for those of you that have received your offer, this is kind of the time that you want to sit down and plan with your parents or guardians or other advocates and on how you're going to decide if Gonzaga is the right fit for you, both financially and overall. And so it's a good time to sort of be weighing the pros and cons of a Gonzaga education, as well as offers that you're receiving from other schools. And again, just another reminder that if you submitted a FAFSA and haven't received an aid offer, feel free to get in touch with us. We will try to get that sorted and get information out to you as quickly as possible. Your final step on this journey, so you were kind of in this fourth bar here for most of you that you've received your financial aid offer. The final step in the financial aid process is going to be to confirm your admission with Gonzaga and celebrate the fact that you're now going to be a ZAG. That's awesome. So I believe we have another poll question as I hand it over to Alexa, and that is only one FAFSA application is submitted during your college education.
Awesome. So we've got some varying answers there. So that is actually false. You will need to refile your FAFSA to qualify for any non-Gonzaga funded aid each year. So again, the FAFSA is only 15-ish minutes and can be easily accessible online. But in order to access non-Gonzaga funded aid every year, you will need to fill out that FAFSA. So for any of our international students that are joining us or viewing this later on, the primary source of funding is going to be academic merit scholarships. So we encourage all of our students to apply for outside scholarships. And for international students specifically, a great place to start would be to contact your local Education USA representative. Our Global Diversity Scholarship is specifically for international students and is awarded automatically if eligible. Another way that international students can help with the cost is through institutional on-campus jobs, which we're going to touch on a little bit more in student employment later in the presentation. And a lot of the material we're going to cover today is geared towards students who are eligible to complete the FAFSA. But I also wanted to take a moment to highlight the financial aid programs available to undocumented students. So all students, regardless of citizenship status, have their application automatically reviewed by the Office of Admission to determine eligibility for merit-based scholarships. We also really encourage students to seek outside scholarships for schools, for all the schools that you will apply to. And I know that Becky's going to put in the chat right now an outside scholarship list that Gonzaga has that can be a great resource for you. Washington students that are residents can also submit the WASFA, or the Washington Application for State Financial Aid, and please do so as soon as possible if you haven't already. As a result of the Washington Real Hope Act becoming law, applications for state need grants are now being accepted, and the WASFA is specifically for low-income non-citizen students that attend a Washington high school who are unable to file a free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, due to immigration status. Non-Washington residents can fill out our needs analysis form to apply for needs-based financial aid, and I believe Becky's also putting a link to that in the chat. For more information about financial aid and scholarships at Gonzaga, you can contact Sharon Griffith in our financial aid office. And again, Becky's going to put in the chat all of that contact info for our financial aid counselors.
Thanks, Alexa. So with that, we just want to spend a minute letting you know some of our systems, because this might be your first time accessing them. So first, you're going to need to set up your ZaigMail account access to access all of Gonzaga's system. Your ZaigMail username and password are your single sign-on credentials logging into lots of Gonzaga systems, like on-campus Wi-Fi, ZagWeb, which is that student portal I mentioned, Canvas, which is the learning management system. Some of these systems, like ZagWeb, you're going to use right away. Others, like on-campus Wi-Fi and Canvas, you probably won't use until you're on campus in the fall. You can find the instructions on how to check your ZaigMail and set up your ZaigMail through your application portal. So again, this portal is distinct from the ZagWeb portal that I'm referring to, and the application portal is apply.gonzaga.edu/status. That's where you would have seen your acceptance decision from Gonzaga. So then after you have your ZaigMail set up, you can access ZagWeb. And we really, really love the prefix Zag at Gonzaga. So get used to it, I guess. But again, ZagWeb is Gonzaga's online portal for students to manage a lot of administrative tasks. This is where you're going to register for classes. It's where you're going to manage your financial aid. If you're a student employee, it's also where you're going to submit a timesheet. And it's worth noting again that ZagWeb is not the same as your application portal. This is a different portal than what you use to access the admission information. So once you've logged into ZagWeb, you'll see tiles. Don't be alarmed if your ZagWeb doesn't look exactly like what's up here on the screen. There might be different tiles depending on where you're at in the process, but everyone should have a financial aid tile, which is circled there. And to access your financial aid, you're going to click on that financial aid tile. So once you're in the financial aid section of the portal, there's a series of tabs across the top. The landing page is the home tab, which is going to display important messages and maybe additional requirements that our office will need for financial aid. But I'm guessing what you're really after is that financial aid offer information, and that's going to be located under the next tab labeled award offer. We've created a helpful video that help you kind of goes into more detail than I can right now to kind of decipher ZagWeb and navigate it. And there's a QR code up here on the screen, or you can visit gonzaga.edu/offer to find the video. The website also has some great information on how to navigate ZagWeb as well. So, and like I mentioned, we also mail out paper financial aid letters to first-year students, and a sample of what one looks like is up here on the screen. And I just want to use this example to talk about different categories of financial aid available to students. At this point in the process, you've probably heard lots of different ways that people are going to describe financial aid. And one really, really important distinction is whether the aid you're offered is gift aid or self-help aid. So gift aid, you know, as you can see here, is just as it sounds. It's money that doesn't need to be repaid. It can be based on financial need or merit, and a lot of times it's based on a combination of both financial need and merit. So usually financial aid funds labeled grants are based more on financial need, and types based on merit or academic achievement or involvement are usually called scholarships. But again, that's not a hard and fast rule. Lots of times, both grants and scholarships are based on a combination of financial need and merit. There are hundreds of different grants and scholarships with different names and eligibility requirements. Some students may qualify for federal grants like the federal Pell Grant or the FSEOG grant, which again are two types of grants that come from the federal government. For Washington residents that attend college in Washington, they may also qualify for the Washington College Grant Program, which has been expanded, or there's also a college bound program as well. But as you look at the paper version of the financial aid offer you've received, you'll see that all the grants and scholarships are grouped together, and then it's subtotaled as well. So note that some grants are based on information submitted on your FAFSA, so changes to your FAFSA may result in a change in your eligibility. I wouldn't say that's super common, but it does happen on occasion. And when we do have changes to students, we communicate those changes to the students' email, ZAGmail, and we'll let you know when those changes have been made and that you can now access updated information in that ZAG web portal. And I think we have our third poll ready to go, which is that true or false, grants always have to be repaid.
That is awesome. Yes, you guys know your stuff. Grants do not have to be repaid. So that is money that has no strings attached to it. And of course, Gonzaga has many grants and scholarships. And as Sarah stated before, the criteria for these vary, and nearly all of them are included in your financial aid offer. There are a few special programs that require a separate application, like our honors program, music, or athletic aid, that we just didn't have all the information for when we printed aid offers. So if you're waiting to hear back from some of those, we'll follow up with a letter or email for the students that were eligible for those scholarships. As you compare aid offers from different schools, it's really important to keep renewability criteria in mind. At Gonzaga, most Gonzaga-based aid is guaranteed for 4 years or until you graduate through our Gonzaga guarantee. The renewability criteria is a 2.0 GPA. The goal is to keep financial aid predictable year over year, at least in the areas we have control over. Federal and state aid is not guaranteed because we're at the mercy of politics and funding from the government. But in my experience, it too remains stable for most families. As a Jesuit school, Gonzaga emphasizes the idea of magis in our university philosophy. Magis refers to the philosophy of doing more for others. With all the forms of financial aid that we have covered today, we work our hardest with families to make Gonzaga a possibility. One more step that we have taken is our Gonzaga Access Pledge, formerly known as the Magis Commitment. The Gonzaga Access Pledge allows Gonzaga to award Pell Grant eligible Washington State residents that apply as first-year students to have their tuition covered from a combination of federal, state, and institutional financial aid resources. If you have a Gonzaga Access Pledge grant on your financial aid offer, you are eligible for this program.
Awesome. We are going to talk about the other category of aid, self-help aid, next. So self-help aid is also just as it sounds. It's a type of financial aid that has some obligation, such as loan that has to be repaid, or work study, which is an opportunity for students to earn money by working on campus. So we have another poll question, which is, do you plan to work while you're in college? Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of yeses and maybes and a few no's. So let's talk about what work study is. Work study is also known as student employment. We tend to use those words interchangeably on our campus, and essentially it's just an opportunity to work while in college. The jobs are designed for students with reasonable work hours. I think on average, we have students working around 10 hours per week, but that can vary. There's some students who might be working more event type stuff where they might only work one weekend a month, and other students that have consistent office hours in an office around campus. The idea is, though, that students can balance their work obligations with their academics and other interests. So if you're eligible for need-based student employment, it would be included in your financial aid offer, like on the slide here. Need-based student employment includes both on and off-campus work. But if you're not offered work study as a part of your financial aid offer, there are still many, many opportunities to work at Gonzaga Each year we have about 1,500 students working on campus, most in non-need-based work opportunities. I think the ratio is about 20 to 30% are working in need-based opportunities and the rest are in non-need-based opportunities. We generally have more jobs than students to fill them. So the process for student employment is that the Student Employment Office will start communicating with students over the summer. We expect to have job searches and job boards ready beginning in early August. It's certainly possible to search for jobs before you arrive on campus, but it's really not required. There's plenty of opportunities to search for jobs throughout the term. Some students know for sure that they want to work and get that dialed in before they arrive to campus. Other students might want a week or two to navigate their schedule, kind of get a sense for what their academic requirements are, and maybe aren't going to start pursuing work until 2 to 4 weeks into the semester. We have a lot more information that we can share about student employment. So we actually have a webinar coming up next month, and that is on April 19th. And at the webinar, they're going to go over the potential opportunities as well as how to secure a job, probably some best practices for communicating with potential employers or supervisors. So let's go ahead and move on to loans. Students that have financial need are going to be eligible to borrow loans in the direct subsidized loan program. And this is a loan that does not earn interest while you're in school. The direct unsubsidized loan program does not require financial need, and all students who are eligible for federal aid can borrow in the unsubsidized loan program. The direct loans have annual limits, and if borrowing from those programs isn't enough aid for you or your family, parents can borrow a Parent Plus loan from the federal loan programs, or the student can borrow from a financial institution like a bank or a credit union. So let's drill down on that a little bit deeper. So first-year students who submit a FAFSA, most are going to be eligible to borrow a total of $5,500 in federal loan eligibility. And again, that is going to be included on your financial aid offer. If you qualify for need-based aid, a portion of this loan could be subsidized. And then this aid offer also includes information about Parent Plus and private loans, which is on that right side towards the bottom there. And we will have the details coming up here in just a second. Another important term you're probably going to hear or have heard is the cost of attendance. And the cost of attendance is a requirement for schools to kind of publish an average of the total cost that a student might incur while studying. So for Gonzaga, these figures are represented up here on the screen, and they're going to include information like personal expenses and transportation, things that Gonzaga may not charge you directly, but they're an estimate of what a student might incur. And again, this is a requirement. Most of the cost estimates are based on averages or weighted calculations. So even those that Gonzaga will charge you directly might not exactly match what's in the published cost of attendance. In our experience, we find that most families are interested in the direct costs, which are represented on the right. Direct costs are what are going to appear on a student's bill. So for first-year students, this would be tuition, course fees, on-campus housing, and meal plans. So while we're on the topic of costs, I just want to take a second to introduce our Student Accounts Office. This is the office that is going to be responsible for preparing and distributing billing statements for tuition fees, room, meal plans, and other fees that students might incur. This office also processes payments, sets up payment plans. They're responsible for dispersing financial aid and issuing refund checks as well. One really kind of key important thing or a bit of advice I have for first-year students is to remain in contact with the Student Accounts Office. They're awesome. They're so helpful, easy to work with, but effective communication really is key to making the whole financial aid and payment process go smoothly. We see many different creative ways that students pay for Gonzaga, and there's lots of different payment options. And families can use one that I'm going to highlight here, or really a combination of any of the options that we talk about. And there's probably other options that I'm not going to cover as well. But it's important to know that at Gonzaga, we're going to bill by semester. So in July, enrolled students are going to receive a statement that outlines the charges for the upcoming semester. And the first due date is going to be early to mid-August. I want to say it's around August 10th. There is an option for a no fee deferment until the first week of school, if you or your family need a little bit more time to sort out the payment arrangements. So at the time those bill goes out, families can also sign up for monthly payment plans, and this is going to divide the charges up over 4 months. So the payment plan payments would be due in August, September, October, and November. And then again in January, February, March, and April. There's also an option of a parent loan. So parents of dependent students can apply for the federal Parent Plus loan. The application isn't available quite yet. We expect it to be open sometime in April. This is a federal loan program. It's going to work a little bit different than a traditional consumer loan. The loan doesn't require a credit check, but it is based on the absence of negative credit, as opposed to your credit score dictating how much you can borrow. So there's no minimum score needed to get a plus loan, but you may not qualify if you have adverse credit history in the last 90 days. And what adverse credit is, or what it's defined as, it could be negative line items on your credit report, like payments that are 90 days late, tax liens, and there's more as well. There's another category, kind of when the financial aid that's offered isn't enough, there's kind of 2 loan programs that we talk about. One I just referred to is the parent loan programs. There's also what are called private or alternative loans. And these are loans from financial institutions. They're more like your traditional consumer loans. And information about both the plus loan and private loans is available at gonzaga.edu/loans. Another frequently asked question we get is about college saving plans. So in Washington, we have like the GET program, 529 plans, Dream Ahead. There are other sort of savings plans as well. So in order to get the money that's in those savings plans to Gonzaga, you're actually going to initiate that through whatever organization the savings plan is. So the really general advice that we have for people is to sign into the account, and they should have hopefully relatively easy instructions on how you initiate payment to Gonzaga. It might take a few weeks. Again, that's where that no fee deferment could come in handy. But be sure when you're requesting money from whatever account that you're asking or including the student's full name and ID, so we can make sure it's seamless in getting that matched up to your students' accounts.
Going into more other types of aid for students, outside scholarships are scholarships from sources other than Gonzaga, and there's many different sources that these can come from. But these scholarships are what students pursue outside of traditional financial aid processes. Each year, Gonzaga students bring in between $2 and $3 million in outside scholarships, and the best place to look for these outside scholarships is in your own community. If a student receives an outside scholarship, it's usually from an organization they already have a relationship with. So community groups, booster clubs, Rotary clubs, those are also frequent sources. Service organizations that you and your family members may be involved in, like Campfire, Girl Scouts, or other sources. And sometimes even parent or student employers and other community foundations are also great places to look for those opportunities. There are a few other resources that we would like to share for when looking for scholarships. For Washington residents, you can search for scholarships at washboard.org. This is a curated list of scholarships maintained by the Washington Student Achievement Council, and most scholarships will be directed to Washington residents attending school in Washington. Gonzaga, as I mentioned before, also maintains a scholarship search engine. And again, we're going to reshare that link in the chat. So you're welcome to check for other scholarship opportunities there as well. Very frequently, outside scholarships can affect a student's financial aid. As aid administrators, our financial aid office is required to coordinate all of the financial aid a student receives So we ask that students report outside scholarships on ZagWeb, which is that portal we went through a little bit earlier. But please rest assured that if it is necessary to adjust your aid due to an outside scholarship, that we will do so in the order that is most beneficial to the student, and usually looking at loans first. I also want to point out that Gonzaga has a family discount program. Gonzaga University provides a family discount when there are multiple siblings attending simultaneously full-time as undergraduate students. That discount is 10% off of the older sibling who receives a 10% reduction of tuition. We do ask that families notify us via email or by using a simple form that helps us keep track of the siblings. And again, we're going to put that in the chat. For students who are military connected, whether you are a student veteran or the dependent of a service member, use of military education benefits is an available option at Gonzaga. We've highlighted a few here just to name some of the available programs utilized by our enrolling students, including the post 9/11 GI Bill and associated yellow ribbon programs, the Montgomery GI Bill, Chapter 35 for survivors and dependents, as well as the vocational rehabilitation benefits. It's important to note that there is a process for transferring service member benefits to a dependent through the Department of Defense, and dependents in return must apply to the VA to transfer that entitlement to the university. Families as well as student veterans are encouraged to build a timeline to complete these tasks and are welcome to contact Gonzaga's VA benefits team, and you can see their contact info here on the screen for additional advising and assistance in navigating the process. Once a student has confirmed enrollment to the university and registered for classes, benefits will be certified each semester.
Thanks, Alexa. I just want to reiterate on the outside scholarships. It's really uncommon that they would impact a student's financial aid offer. In my time working at Gonzaga, it's only happened a handful of times in 15 years. And generally, that's because a student has tens of thousands of dollars in outside scholarships or in an outside scholarship. But just know that we are going to work with you to help you leverage that, and only as a last resort, because there is a maximum amount of financial aid a student can receive, would we have to reduce the aid that's coming from Gonzaga. So moving forward, let's talk a little bit about special circumstances. The FAFSA is based on a family's 2021 income. And we know that lots of families' income might have changed since then. The 2021 income is adequate for some families, maybe even most families, but we know that's not the case for many families, especially as we navigate the economic impacts of the pandemic and other things that continue to kind of impact us all. So financial aid regulations allow us as financial aid administrators to use kind of current or projected financial information to adjust your FAFSA to really get the best picture of your family's current financial situation. So what this appeal process does, what the special circumstances appeal process does, is it allows us to recalculate the FAFSA with current income data and sort of calculate your student's eligibility. But it's important to know that not every appeal is going to result in a change to a student's overall financial aid package. There are many things that we can take into consideration through this process, and there are some things that we can't. Most of the circumstances are going to be outlined on our financial aid appeals page. So the most common things that we see are a loss of wage or benefit of a parent or a spouse. So if a parent, switches jobs and takes a cut in pay, or if they're no longer employed, that would be a really good reason to get in touch and submit a special conditions appeal. Divorce or separation, significant medical expenses, loss of child support. If child support is ending when a student turns 18, that is another reason to get in touch. If your student that is thinking about enrolling at Gonzaga has younger siblings in private school, that is something else we can take into consideration, as well as if there's really significant amount of support paid to extended family members that aren't in the primary dwelling of the family. So you can contact your office. We have a pretty quick and simple sort of intake form that is also published on our website. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about your circumstances, that'll help us kind of determine the next steps in the process. And it may result in a phone call where we talk about kind of what's changed and establish what documentation we may need to make those changes. A Gonzaga education is an investment, but we believe really strongly in what we do and the value of a Gonzaga education. So up on the slide, you're going to see a bunch of different measures, all things that we're proud of. Gonzaga's indebtedness is well below the national average for all four-year schools and below the average for other schools as well. All admitted students have been mailed a brochure about the value of a Gonzaga education, and GU is considered a top value in higher education because of the quality of the school and the cost of attendance after financial aid. We have impressive stats throughout the brochure to show you how well we prepare students for the future. And if you want to discuss specific academic programs as well as the holistic education of a ZAG, we'd encourage you to contact our admissions office for individual meetings or register for future virtual events. Gonzaga admitted you because we believe in you and we hope that you will all be ZAGs.
So this concludes the presentation portion of our tonight's webinar, and we really hope this information has helped to clarify our financial aid process, as well as give you a sense of what you and your family can prepare for. But another great way to stay connected to Gonzaga and learn more about our community is through visiting campus and hearing from our students and faculty. We would love for you to schedule meetings to meet with professors and current students. There's a mix of in-person and virtual events coming up as well, with a virtual diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging series starting on March 21, and an in-person Gonzaga Experience Live, or GEL, which is a treasured Gonzaga tradition, on April 15. You're also going to have at GEL, you'll have the opportunity to learn about various student programs and offices on campus. You'll experience sample classes, connect with current students, and so much more. You can sign up to participate in GEL at our website. Again, that is going to be in the chat. It's just gonzaga.edu/GEL, or GEL. We are open for in-person visits throughout the spring, and we would love to have you on campus. So you should be sure to register ahead of time. And all campus visit information can be found at gonzaga.edu/visit. Again, we'll put that in the chat. We also encourage you to attend one of our accepted student receptions. Some of you may have already done that this past week, but we're hosting several receptions in various cities in the coming weeks. But we're also hosting a virtual reception on Tuesday, March 14th, so just next week. So if you cannot attend or are unable to attend an in-person accepted student reception, we really encourage you to register for our virtual reception. And all of that information can be found at gonzaga.edu/RSVP. You're just going to have such a great opportunity to learn more about GU and connect with other accepted students that way. So we're now going to turn it over to our Q&A session. I see some hands that are raised. Please remember, we're only addressing questions via the Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We'll be answering some out loud, as well as having our great colleagues that are typing away some answers and providing some helpful links. And if you are requiring a more detailed conversation, again, please feel free to contact either of our offices. But I'll kick it over to Sandra now to see if we have any questions we should be addressing out loud.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Alexa and Sarah, for that awesome presentation. As Alexa mentioned, if y'all do still have questions, we have a good amount of time to answer them. So please do put them in the Q&A. We'll continue to type answers, and then I'll present questions out loud to our presenters that are better answered that way. So feel free to continue adding those. So our first one that came in, does Gonzaga accept the ISFAA? And if so, is there still time to fill it out and send it in?
So I'm not familiar with the ISFAA. Maybe that is a state form similar to the form we have in Washington. So while we wouldn't accept it or have a way to get the data from that form to us, there is the need analysis form, which was shared earlier, and or give us a call. We will make sure that we understand the question and, be able to have your financial aid information up to make sure that we're maximizing your financial aid eligibility and getting you the information you need about applying for aid.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. The next question is, my family is moving to Washington State in my freshman year. Can I qualify for the Gonzaga Access Pledge in my sophomore year?
So unfortunately, our current policy is that students would have to qualify for the Gonzaga Access Pledge in their first year. There are some, to be a Washington resident, there are a bunch of things established by the state of Washington, and including a duration of how long you have to live in Washington. So as our policy currently stands, you wouldn't be able to qualify for it after your first year. That being said, Gonzaga's Washington State Grant Program is one of the best in the country for Washington residents attending schools in Washington. So while the Gonzaga Access Pledge may not be a specific option, there may be ways that your financial aid could increase by virtue of the state aid programs that you might become eligible for.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So in terms of the total cost of attendance that was shared earlier, how do we estimate those personal expenses that are on there?
Yeah, great question. I think personal expenses can probably vary widely from student to student. I have 2 kiddos, and I imagine one will have quite a bit higher personal expenses than the other. I won't name names though. So we use survey data from across the state. Our State Financial Aid Association surveys students every few years to kind of get at those personal expenses. So that's kind of where we land on that. And then on the years that we don't have survey data, we would adjust for inflation. But again, I think that those expenses can vary widely based on spending habits, based on your preference for like the type of shampoo you use or other things as well. So I would sort of take that average with a grain of salt. And, we have several months, 5-ish months between now and when you would be coming to Gonzaga. So maybe pay attention to the types of things you're having to buy, the types of personal expenses you have to get a better estimate of what yours might be.
Great, thanks. This question is, we have a prepaid tuition plan from another state than Washington. How do those payments credit against the tuition costs at GU?
Yeah, great question that I didn't really go into the details too much. So there should be a dollar value associated with whatever credits you purchased through the prepaid tuition plan. And essentially that would just transfer dollar for dollar at Gonzaga. So if you have, so many units that is worth $5,000, then essentially the organization would send that $5,000 to Gonzaga to be credited to the student's account.
Great, thank you. If there is a need to appeal, so the special conditions form, would Gonzaga require our 2022 tax documents and W-2s?
Another great question. It depends. That's one of our favorite answers in financial aid. So we don't require any documentation initially. There's going to be a couple of things that happen through the appeal process. One is that we just want to take a look at your FAFSA. We may ask some questions. Through the appeal process, we certainly make adjustments based on things that have changed. We also are, very familiar with the FAFSA application and the questions that it's asking. And we're going to kind of re-ask those questions and confirm that the information on the FAFSA is, in fact, accurate. We see people who maybe over-reported their investments because they included retirement income or they included the equity that they have in their house, which are both things that you're not required to do. So we ask questions in that way. In some cases, we're going to need documentation, but we want to sort of start with a conversation before we establish what documentation. It doesn't necessarily need to be tax documentation. It might be a final pay stub. It might be, something else that sort of just supports whatever it is you're asking us to adjust on the FAFSA.
Great. This question is, how do I figure out the actual amount I will have to pay as opposed to the total cost of attendance estimate printed?
Good question. So on the financial aid offer letter, Alexa, I'm wondering if we can go to one of the slides that has kind of the complete version of it. So some of it is, well, first of all, you can always call our office and we can help you get at that number. So the slide that we have up here under that gift aid, we have an estimated net cost, which is the direct cost. Again, those are the things that Gonzaga is going to charge you, less the grants and scholarships that you were offered. So that estimated net cost, the $38,280, is Spike's estimate of what he's going to owe. And that's before Spike decides whether or not they're going to borrow loans and sort of pursues any other options. So that's one place where you can drill down a little bit more about that number. But in order to get at what you're going to pay Gonzaga or any school you're going to want to take the direct costs and subtract out the grants and scholarships that you've received and the loans that you're planning on accepting. I just want to point out that work study generally doesn't figure into this equation. So work study is going to work like any job that you've had or will have, in terms of you're going to work hours and you're going to get a paycheck. And because it's based on hours work, it generally doesn't go to pay down tuition. It can, but it generally is more used for those personal expenses, those incidental expenses that you're going to experience through college. But if you are stuck and just really want confirmation about what it is you're going to have to pay, I would recommend just getting in touch with our office and we can talk you through that as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. There's been some questions around tuition increases. So as tuition increases each year, are there also more opportunities for our students to earn grants in sophomore through senior year?
Yeah, so we do have the Gonzaga guarantee, which guarantees the financial aid for each of your 4 years. There are some additional opportunities to earn, funding to cover your direct costs. So there's traditional scholarships that might be available, particularly as you get more involved in an academic department. There's also other opportunities, like for instance, to be a resident assistant. If you're a resident assistant, your meal plan and housing is covered, which is a huge expense. There are student hosts that help us, Sandra and Alexa could speak a lot better to that, but they help host students when they visit campus. There are other opportunities to kind of do stipend type work that would allow you to sort of have a payment towards your tuition and fees. And of course, we're going to be here. We work both with new students and returning students. So we're going to be here throughout the process to help you and your family navigate that each year.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see here. I lost my place. There we go. Okay. How would we see if siblings in other Catholic schools have been taken into account for the financial aid package?
So it depends on the type of the Catholic school. Again, I feel like a broken record, but getting in touch with our office and just letting us look at your FAFSA application. So if you have students who are in other Catholic colleges, for instance, that should be reported on your FAFSA. We can check when you give us a call. If you have students, if you're paying private school tuition through kindergarten through 12th grade, for younger siblings that are not yet in college, that would not be taken into consideration on the FAFSA unless or until you do a financial aid appeal.
Thank you. Okay, let me see. Will a financial aid offer be sent in the mail before it is posted on ZagWeb?
We try to make the information, now that we're kind of where we're at, we try to make the information available as quickly as possible, but it's certainly possible that you'll receive something in the mail before it's available on ZagWeb. If you're getting a message on ZagWeb that says there's no information available for you, I forget what the exact terminology is, that would just be a good reason to get in touch with our office. We may have missed checking a box to make it available for you to access. It may just be kind of delayed, but as soon as we enter the financial aid information in our system, the ZagWeb portal is live in real time. So it's really easy for us to turn that on and get that out to you quickly.
Great. Does GU gift aid automatically get applied to your tuition costs?
Yeah, so I think the question here is like, the aid from Gonzaga is going to automatically get applied to all the charges from Gonzaga. So the aid from Gonzaga, isn't specifically designated for different charges. It's just going to go to offset tuition fees, room and board. And that will happen in the student accounts process. When you receive that billing statement from student accounts in July, it will have taken into account the financial aid that you've accepted. Gift aid is automatically accepted. So grants and scholarships are automatically accepted. And if you've accepted loans, that would all be kind of taken into account on that initial billing statement. If this question is more about sometimes there are scholarships that can only be used to pay tuition, that's not necessarily true for most of the scholarships that we have. Only in kind of a few cases I can think of, do we say this specific scholarship has to be applied to tuition. And so if you're pursuing outside scholarships, for instance, that have to be applied towards tuition, I think that in general, your other financial aid is not going to be reduced. But again, that's a good reason to get in touch with us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And just a reminder, folks, we're going to get through as many questions as we can. If we don't get through all your questions, we'll make sure that you have our contact information to be able to reach out following this webinar. So another question around tuition increases. There's a question that is, what is the tuition and fee increase that was announced 2 days ago, which was referenced in a previous question? And is that different than what is on the offer letters?
So the tuition and fees increase that was announced a couple of days ago, the email that went out to our current students was already taken into account on the financial aid offers. So the financial aid offers has the accurate tuition and fee information for next year. That's generally established in by early January. So when we create financial aid offers, we have that. We just wanted to give our returning students a heads up as they are going to be having access to their financial aid offers in the next week or so.
Thank you, Sarah. Is it possible for international students to have their scholarships increased based on their academic achievements?
Do you want to take this one, Alexa, or do you want me to take it?
Yeah, I can take that. So any of the academic merit scholarship that you would have received from admission is based on anything that or all of the information we had on your application. Now, as you go through Gonzaga as a student, there are opportunities for additional scholarships, as Sarah mentioned before, through academic departments. And things like that you can apply for through your major or other things like that. So for the academic standpoint, the academic merit scholarship that you would have received initially based on your application would not increase, but there are opportunities for scholarships available to you as a current student.
Awesome. Sarah, anything to add on that, or are you good?
No, I think Alexa nailed it. Thank you.
Perfect. Can you talk more about discounts when you have siblings in college at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the family discount policy that we address. So if there are 2 students in undergraduate programs at Gonzaga, essentially the family is eligible for a 10% discount. We generally add that discount to the older sibling. So they would have, 52, 54 added to their financial aid offer. But we can certainly accommodate a request if it makes more sense to split the discount between the 2 siblings or give it to the younger sibling as well. We don't have the best way of keeping track of siblings. So we do ask that you submit that family discount form, that request form, and note that we can't add it until both siblings have confirmed enrollment at Gonzaga. So, if you already have a kiddo at Gonzaga and there's another one thinking about it, we wouldn't add it to the financial aid offer until the deposit for the younger sibling is paid. And the same thing would be true as if you have two siblings entering at the same time. They would both kind of need to be confirmed and enrolled at Gonzaga.
Awesome. Thank you. And folks, I just added the family discount notification form to the chat again. So if you were looking for that, it is right there. If your GPA goes up throughout your college career, is it possible to qualify for additional merit aid?
Yeah, I can take this one again, Sarah. So much like it is with international students, the academic merit scholarship that you received initially from the Office of Admission is based on your common application when you applied to Gonzaga, or the Gonzaga transfer application if you were a transfer student joining us. And so that merit aid is based just off of the information that you use when you apply to Gonzaga. So any additional aid based on how you're performing in college, as far as scholarships, again, would be available via those different academic departments or any outside scholarships, but your academic merit aid will not increase based on your college information, as that is aid that was given to you based off of the information on your application.
Thank you, Alexa. Let's see, Sarah, I see you already marked this next one to answer live. If we missed the deadline to apply for the alumni scholarship this year, can we apply in future years?
Yes, you can. The alumni scholarship will accept applications from students at any undergraduate level, so freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So that is a possibility in future years.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Sarah. If someone applied for it as a first-year student and they do end up getting awarded it, do they have to reapply each year?
No, it's automatically renewable at the amount they were offered their freshman year. There is some incentive to reapply though, because there are some higher dollar amounts. There's specifically named scholarships where a student may receive $2,500 in their sophomore year, but junior year they could apply for I think it's either a $5,000 or a $7,500 one. So it's not required to retain that $2,500 amount, but it might be worthwhile because there's higher dollar amounts available.
Great, thank you. Are there any financial considerations for siblings attending other colleges?
Yeah, so one thing, the financial considerations for siblings attending other colleges, part of that is taken into consideration on the FAFSA application. So the FAFSA application, the output of the FAFSA is the expected family contribution, which is a little bit of a misnomer. And I saw some other comments in here, like every family is alarmed by whatever that number says. So know that if that was alarming to you, you are absolutely not alone. It is kind of shocking, I think, when people do the FAFSA and see this expected family contribution. That really works more like an index. And when there's multiple families in college, that contribution is divided in two. So that's one of the ways that multiple kids in college are taken into consideration. Again, I would just reiterate the invitation to get in touch with our office and just make sure that we have that accounted for properly on the FAFSA, and that if there's other considerations or other things that maybe were incorrect on the FAFSA and or are appealable, meaning that we could adjust your FAFSA based on changes in your financial circumstance. That's what we kind of want to find out and just make sure we've maximized the aid eligibility.
Great, thank you. How soon does the needs analysis form need to be turned in?
So the need analysis form would be for students that are not eligible to file the FAFSA and or not Washington residents, as soon as possible. It generally doesn't take a whole long time to get that process, but I imagine if you're inquiring about it, you would want to know. If you are eligible to file a FAFSA, if you're a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, then I would encourage you again to submit the FAFSA as soon as possible. We typically have, if you did the FAFSA tonight, we would probably have it by Friday and could very quickly have a financial aid offer out to you.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm looking through our questions. Okay, we just got one. Is the GU sibling discount 10% of tuition or 10% of direct costs?
10% of tuition.
Great. Okay. Again, we have a little bit of time if folks have any other questions, but as of now, to my presenters, let's see, they're coming in a little bit. Here we go. If your FAFSA decreases in future years, can your Gonzaga grants increase?
So we typically don't reevaluate the Gonzaga grants, at least that's kind of our current practice and policy. But again, if there is a major change in your family circumstance, you may qualify for additional federal or state aid, depending on your state residency, and or there, you may have be eligible for kind of an appeal that would allow grants to increase. It might not be called a Gonzaga grant, but I think there is potential for grants to increase if there's a major change in a family's financial circumstances. If the income that was reported on your FAFSA was an abnormal year, meaning maybe you made just a ton more money that year, or you got a very large bonus that was out of character for your typical earnings, that would be a really good reason to appeal, to provide us a little bit more information. Or if you routinely experience kind of not stable income, but income that goes up and down, there are some things that we may be able to do to just help get a kind of better picture of your family's financial circumstances.
Great.
And yes,
And
yes, the Gonzaga grant is renewable for 4 years. And I want to just clarify what we really mean by 4 years. Most of our students graduate in 4 years, but it's renewable. The Merit Scholarship, the Gonzaga grant, nearly all of the other Gonzaga aid students have been offered is going to be renewable for the duration of a student's undergraduate studies. So most of our students, that's 4 years. Some students that might be 4.5 or 5 years. And for students that finish in less than 4 years, the remaining value is forfeited. So the Gonzaga guarantee kind of guarantees that students are going to be supported through their undergraduate program.
Okay. If there's no reevaluation, what is the point to redoing the FAFSA every year if you do not qualify for anything need-based?
So the FAFSA is, so a couple of things. The FAFSA is an annual form, and that was the point of our poll question, right? That the FAFSA is an annual form. So if a student qualifies for the federal Pell Grant, SEOG grant, Washington State grant, those are all really good reasons to review the FAFSA. If a student's not qualifying for any need-based aid, but is going to borrow in the federal loan programs, they would also need to do a FAFSA every year. And we are pretty proactive about notifying our returning students that have used federal aid if they need to sort of resubmit a FAFSA every year. But the point of the poll question was just to acknowledge that it is an annual form. Another reason to do a FAFSA every year, even if you didn't initially qualify for need-based aid, would be as if there's a change in financial circumstances.
Thank you. And can you define what is the Gonzaga grant?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Gonzaga grant is a need-based grant. It is for students that demonstrate a certain level of financial need. It may not be that the expected family contribution is less than the total cost of attendance, and the amount's going to range from, I think, $1,000 is the lowest, up to, gosh, I don't have the chart in front of me, but up to maybe $6,000-7,000. It's going to depend on again, financial need and other factors and other aid that the student is receiving as well.
Awesome, thank you. We'll see if any more questions come in.
Awesome. And I just want to point out, thank you all so much for so many of your questions. This is really what we're here to do, is to be a resource for all of you while you make this really important decision. So I just want to reiterate again, all of the amazing opportunities we have both virtually and in person to connect with each of our offices in answering all of your questions and being that resource. So it doesn't look like many questions are coming in, but again, all of our contact info is on our website and was shared throughout the chat. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of you that have stuck with us during this hour. And hopefully we were able to answer some of your questions, or at least give you a general overview of what the financial aid process is specifically at Gonzaga. I want to say a huge thank you to Sarah for joining us and all of her expertise and information. I want to say a huge thank you to Sandra, Helen, Teresa, and Becky for answering all of those questions in the chat and providing more resources for our students. If you have any further questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out for us. A huge congratulations to all of our accepted students. You are so talented and we want you all to be a ZAG, and we're going to try our best to make that happen as much as we can. So thank you all. I hope you all have a great rest of your night. And again, presentation and the Q&A has been recorded, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel in the coming days, as well as our website. And we are going to send it out in an email in the coming days as well. So it'll be accessible everywhere for future viewing. And have a great night, everyone.